The quietest mistake a woman can make is assuming silence means weakness. Lena Mercer made that mistake with me on Monday. March 11, 2024, at 7:16 inches the morning. While the coffee was still dripping in the kitchen of our townhome in Buckhead. My name is Ethan Caldwell. And that morning, she walked into the room dressed for war. Charcoal suit, black heels. The gold watch she only wore when she wanted people to know she was the one controlling the clock. She placed a navy folder beside my mug without sitting down. It was too neat, too polished, too ready. The kind of folder that did not arrive because someone had a thought last night. The kind of folder that had been waiting its turn. My attorney finished the postnuptial agreement. She said, eyes on her phone. It is not emotional. It is just responsible. I looked at the folder. Mercer. Cole and Vance printed in raised silver on the corner. Her signature was already visible through the transparent tab on the last page. We have been married less than 2 years. I said, exactly. Lena answered, which is why we should do this before life gets more complicated. She finally looked at me then, not lovingly, not even coldly, more like a banker reviewing a file that had become slightly inconvenient. Take your time, she said. My lawyer can explain anything you do not understand. Then she picked up her bag, walked past me, and left without a kiss. She had not kissed me goodbye in 8 months. I know that because quiet men count what loud people think they can erase. I sat there with the folder beside my coffee for almost a full minute. Then I opened it. 23 pages. Exhibits. Schedules. Definitions. Her assets listed carefully. Her company shares protected. Her retirement accounts protected. Her Buckhead condo from before our marriage protected. And on page 14, under my section, the phrase that made my chest go still. Husband's financial holdings are believed to be limited, informal, and not material to the marital estate. Not material. I read those words twice. Then a third time. I did not get angry. Anger is loud. Anger warns people. What I felt was cleaner than anger. I felt the room come into focus. Welcome to Dad's Cold Justice. Before this story goes any further, drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from and what time it is there. Subscribe to the channel if you like. Slow revenge, quiet fathers, cold truth, and endings that arrive exactly when they should. Because this story does not really begin with that Navy folder on March 11, 2024. It begins almost 3 years earlier, on Thursday, April 22, 2021, at an Emory alumni donor reception in Atlanta. It was one of those careful Southern business events where everyone smiles with their teeth while checking name tags with their eyes. Rooftop terrace in Midtown. Past appetizers. Donors pretending not to measure each other. Young founders trying to sound older. Old money trying to sound useful. I was standing near the far end of the terrace, beside a tray of crab cakes that were better than most of the conversations, wondering why my old friend Marcus Bell had dragged me there. You have to stop hiding. Marcus had told me that afternoon. You sold a company, not your personality. I like my personality private. I said, that is not a personality. He said, that is a locked filing cabinet. So I went. Navy jacket. No tie. Old brown shoes. I had planned to stay 40 minutes, shake 3 hands, and go home to watch baseball with the sound low. Then, Lena Mercer appeared beside me. You are either avoiding the room, she said, or studying it. I turned. Those are not mutually exclusive. She laughed. Not the boardroom laugh. A real one. Soft. Surprised. Slightly dangerous. Lena Mercer, she said. Ethan Caldwell. What do you do? Ethan Caldwell. There it was. The question people ask when they want to know how much respect to give you. Consulting. I said. Mostly retired. I help supply chain companies when they get themselves tangled up. Most people here. Mostly retired. And either get bored or suspicious. Lena did neither. She looked more interested. I run one of those tangled companies, she said. That company was Mercer Lane Medical Logistics, a regional healthcare delivery and cold chain operation moving surgical supplies, specialty medications, and lab materials across Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and the Carolinas. She described it like a battlefield she intended to win by breakfast. She was sharp, funny in a dry, expensive way, ambitious enough to make the air around her feel slightly pressurized. And when she looked at me, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Sayin. At least I thought I did. Here is what Lena believed she had found that night. A cute consultant. Comfortable but not powerful. A decent man with a useful background and no visible appetite for attention. Someone who knew enough about business to make her look grounded, but not enough to threaten her position in a room. Here is what she did not know. 4 years before that reception, I sold a logistics risk software company I had built from my apartment in Charlotte to a private equity firm in Denver for a number large enough that my accountant asked me twice if I wanted a security consultant. No announcement. No magazine profile. No speech. I signed the final documents, drove back to my hotel, ordered a cheeseburger, and watched an old Braves game on television. That was my celebration. Money is loud only when insecure people hold it. I never wanted applause. I wanted doors that opened quietly and closed behind me. By the time Lena met me, I owned minority positions in 16 companies, 2 warehouses, 3 apartment buildings, a small data center outside Raleigh, and pieces of real estate in places Lena had never asked me about because she had already decided what I was. That was her first mistake. She researched the version of me I allowed the world to see. We dated for 13 months. She introduced me to investors as my steady one, which sounded affectionate until you heard the way she said it in a room full of men in Italian loafers, like I was a well-trained dog that could hold a conversation. Marcus noticed it before I wanted to admit it. At a Mercer Lane fundraising dinner in November 2021, he pulled me aside near the hotel bar, loosened his tie, and pointed his glass toward the room. "She likes what you represent," he said. "She likes me," I said. He looked at me with that old friend expression. Men hate because it usually means they are about to hear the truth. "She likes that you look harmless beside her," he said. "Those are not the same thing." I laughed it off because sometimes a man will defend a lie just because he wants it to be true. On Saturday, June 18, 2022, Lena and I got married at the Swan House at the Atlanta History Center. 32 guests. White flowers. Pale summer heat rising off the stone. A string quartet playing something too elegant for a man whose first suit came from a clearance rack. It was her idea to keep the wedding small. Intimate, she said. Clean, she said. No circus. I noticed that 3 of her investors still sent arrangements large enough to block windows. I remember standing in the reception room looking at those flowers and thinking, why do investors send wedding flowers like warning signs? I filed that thought away. I file everything. The first year was good. I will not pretend otherwise. We cooked on Sundays. We walked the East Side Beltline when she could get away from work. She fell asleep during documentaries and denied it every time. I knew how she liked her coffee. She knew I hated cilantro. Then came the slow change. She started saying my company louder and our life softer. She took calls in the hallway, her phone face down at dinner. She stayed late in the office 3 nights a week. Then 4. Then most nights when she had investor pressure. Still, I said nothing. A marriage does not die the first time someone lies. It dies when the other person stops being surprised. On Sunday, October 22, 2023, she was at the office again. I was home at the kitchen table, looking for the renewal paperwork for our homeowner's insurance. We kept household documents in a shared cloud folder. Taxes, warranties, contracts, boring adult stuff. I clicked into an archive folder by accident. At least that is what I told myself for the first 3 seconds. There was a PDF titled Continuity Plan EC. Eck. Ethan Caldwell. I opened it. 14 pages. Clean headers. Footnotes. Dates. My marriage laid out like a corporate restructuring. Year 1. Stabilize public image after Series C scrutiny. Year 2. Create shared household narrative while preserving founder equity. Year 3. Introduce post-nuptial agreement. Once emotional dependence is sufficient, Year 4. Consolidate investor confidence and reduce spouse's leverage. Year 5. Controlled dissolution, if required. And on page 9, one name appeared 3 times. Pierce Landon, Chief Strategy Officer at Mercer Lane. Smooth voice. Perfect hair. The kind of man who says we should circle back like he invented time. He had shaken my hand at dinners and once called me champ, which should have been legally actionable. I read the document twice. Then I closed the laptop. I walked into the kitchen and made shrimp and grits from scratch, because there are moments when the hands need work before the mind decides what kind of man it is going to be. Lena came home at 3:08 that night. Something smells amazing, she said, dropping her bag by the door. Sit down. I said. We ate. She told me about a board call. I asked the right questions. I poured the wine. I cleaned the dishes. We went to bed. And while she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and understood the worst part. She had not married me, despite thinking I was ordinary. She had married me because she thought I was ordinary. To her investors, I was stability. To her board, I was humility. To her public image, I was proof that Lena Mercer was not just a ruthless founder with a control problem. She had a husband, a quiet one, a modest one, a man with no visible hunger. I was not a partner. I was investor relations with a wedding ring. That night I made a decision. No shouting, no accusations, no dramatic suitcase in the hallway. A person running a 5-year plan does not deserve a 5-minute reaction. The only way to beat a patient betrayal is to become more patient than the person betraying you. Which brings us back to Monday. March 11. 2024. The Navy folder. The postnuptial agreement. And the phrase not material. After Lena left, I finished my coffee. Then I called Samuel Price, my attorney, and the only man alive who can make a linen jacket look like cross-examination. Samuel had represented me since my first company was 3 employees and a server rack that sounded like a lawnmower. He answered on the 3rd ring. Ethan, he said, this better be interesting. It is, I said. Can you be in Atlanta tomorrow? A pause. How bad I looked out the kitchen window at Buckhead waking up around me. Dog walkers. Delivery trucks. Sunlight hitting glass towers like nothing important had happened. It is not bad, I said. It is finally useful. Samuel landed at Hartsfield-Jackson the next morning. Tuesday, March 12, carrying a leather briefcase, a wrinkled shirt, and the expression of a man who had slept badly but was willing to be entertained. We met in my small office in Old Fourth Ward. Lena thought I worked from coffee shops and our kitchen table. She did not know about the office because the lease was held by a management company she had never heard of. Small room, 2 chairs, 1 desk, 1 window facing a brick wall. Paid annually. Quiet places are useful when you are doing loud things silently. Samuel sat down, opened the folder, and read the postnup without speaking. That worried me. Samuel only goes silent when something is either very boring or very good. When he finished, he leaned back and tapped page 14. She really wrote not material, he said. She did. After drafting a plan about you. Yes. He smiled slightly. That is generous of her. I slid another folder across the desk. Inside was a printed copy of Continuity Plan EC. Samuel read that one slower. When he reached Pierce Landon's name, his eyebrows moved for the first time. She documented motive, timing, and intent. He said, people do strange things when they think no one is smart enough to read. He looked up. What do you want? I handed him 1 page. A summary of what I had already mapped out over the past 5 months. Holdings, targets, investors, debt maturities, vendor pressure points, board relationships. Samuel read it. Then read it again. You have been waiting since October, he said. I have been learning since October. This is not revenge, he said. No, I said. Revenge is emotional. This is architecture. Samuel closed the folder, looked at me for a long moment, and then did something rare. He took out a pen. All right, he said. Let's build the house. The first thing we created was Peachtree Gate Holdings, LLC. Boring name. Boring paperwork. Boring registered agent. If you want people to stop looking, give them something that sounds like it belongs in a filing cabinet under insurance riders. Peachtree Gate's first move was careful and quiet. Mercer Lane had early investors who wanted liquidity. Healthcare logistics is capital hungry. Trucks break. Refrigeration systems fail. Fuel costs move like they have personal grudges. Two early investors had been waiting for a clean secondary sale. Through 2 layers beneath Peachtree Gate, I bought 7% of Mercer Lane's non-voting preferred units. Not 10. 10 makes people squint. 9.7 makes them yawn. By late April 2024, I owned a quiet piece of the company Lena was trying to protect from me. The same week, she came home with takeout from a Thai place in Brookhaven and told me I was the easiest part of her life. I almost admired the symmetry, but the company stake was only the front porch. The house needed walls. Lena talked about vendors constantly. Savannah Cold Storage was unreliable. The Birmingham Courier Network was overcharging. The Chattanooga cross-dock could not hit overnight turnaround. Her Macon route was bleeding patience. Whatever that meant, I listened like a husband. I acted like a husband. I refilled her glass and asked, "What are you going to do then on Saturdays?" I drove to my old Fourth Ward office and did exactly what she did not know I could do. I provided capital to a Savannah pharmaceutical cold storage operator through a minority note. I took a position in a Birmingham medical courier group that needed expansion funding but hated banks. I bought into a small routing software firm in Chattanooga whose product Mercer Lane had tested and dismissed as too early. Nothing controlling, nothing theatrical, just enough to have a chair in the room when contracts renewed. Just enough that the people across the table from Lena's procurement team had invisible reasons to take my calls first. I am not proud of enjoying that. I am also not going to lie and say I did not. Revenge does not always wear a black suit and kick open a door. Sometimes it reviews vendor agreements at 6:20 on a Saturday morning, while the person who betrayed you thinks you are at the farmer's market buying peaches. The hardest part was not the strategy. Strategy is clean. Numbers tell the truth if you know how to make them talk. The hardest part was dinner. It was sitting across from Lena on Wednesday nights while she talked about a board member in Boston who did not understand founder psychology. It was asking how her day went while knowing my name was inside her file, under controlled dissolution. It was holding her umbrella outside a restaurant in Midtown while rain hit the sidewalk, and she slipped her arm through mine like we were real. There were nights when I hated how much I still wanted the old version of her to walk back into the room. One night in December 2023, before the postnup, rain hammered the Buckhead windows so hard it sounded like applause for a bad decision. Lena was asleep upstairs. I sat in the kitchen with a glass of bourbon. I did not drink. I thought about that rooftop reception in April 2021. I thought about her laughing before she had learned where to place the knife. I thought about the wedding flowers from investors and how foolish I had been to mistake surveillance for celebration. For 10 minutes, I let myself grieve the marriage I thought I had. Then I poured the bourbon down the sink, rinsed the glass, and went to bed, because wanting the truth to be different does not make a lie less expensive. In early May 2024, Samuel called me while I was walking near Piedmont Park. "No greeting," I said. "Pierce Landon," he said. I stopped. "Talk." He is raising a private healthcare infrastructure fund on the side. Small. 12 limited partners, looking for an anchor commitment so he can pretend the fund is already inevitable. How much $3 million would make him fall in love with whoever writes the check? Do it. Distance 3 layers, minimum. Samuel was quiet for a second. He called me champ once. I added, 4 layers. Samuel said, "That is why I pay you." By the end of May, Pierce Landon's personal fund had its anchor capital. He did not know it was mine. He did not know that the quiet husband he smirked at during Mercer Lane dinners was now sitting under his fund like bedrock. Take a moment with that. The man named inside my wife's 5-year exit plan had unknowingly built his new future on my money. By June 2024, the board under my feet looked different. Peachtree Gate held 7% of Mercer Lane's preferred units. 2 of Mercer Lane's vendor networks were tied to my capital. A Chattanooga routing firm they suddenly needed to revisit was partly mine. Pierce Landon's private fund carried my anchor commitment through 4 layers. And Lena was having a record quarter. The board praised her discipline. Investors relaxed. Pierce strutted around the office like a man whose reflection had begun applauding him. Every morning, Lena left the house, believing she was building leverage. Every Saturday, I made that leverage more expensive. Then came the post-nup response. Samuel spent 3 weeks preparing a disclosure package. Not a counteroffer, not a threat. A mirror. 61 pages. Full schedules. Company stakes. Real estate. Software exits. Creditor notes. Investment positions. International holdings. Peachtree Gate. The vendor relationships. Pierce Landon's fund. With each layer documented cleanly enough that a junior associate could follow the breadcrumbs and lose sleep. Lena's agreement was 23 pages. My disclosure was 61. She brought me a folder. I brought her a building inspection. Samuel sent it to her attorney on Thursday. June 20. 2024. At 9:03 the morning. At 2:17 that afternoon. He called me. You should sit down. He said. I am standing. Then stand dramatically. Her attorney called. Lena's attorney was Caroline Vance. Senior partner, 26 years in complex family law. Known around Atlanta for speaking softly while removing people's options. Samuel said the call lasted 11 minutes. Ms. Vance said your holdings are substantially different from her client's understanding. Samuel told me. That is a polite sentence. She asked whether you would consider revising the postnuptial structure. What did you say? I asked. Which structure? And she said the one her client proposed. I looked out the office window at the brick wall. For almost 2 years. That wall had been my favorite view, because it never pretended to be anything else. No, I said. Her terms stand. Every word. But attach the disclosure. Full disclosure. No hiding. If she wants her contract, she can sign her contract, knowing exactly who I am. Samuel exhaled. You understand that may make her angrier. She has mistaken anger for power before. There is a moment in every quiet war when the enemy hears something in the distance and realizes it is not thunder. It is the bridge behind them coming down. For Lena. That moment came the following Monday. She came home early. That was how I knew. Lena did not come home early. She came home victorious. Exhausted. Or furious. But never early. Our townhome had become a place where she slept between campaigns. But at 4:12 that afternoon, I walked in and found her sitting at the kitchen table. No laptop. No phone. No jacket. The Navy post-nup folder lay closed in front of her. Hey, I said, setting my keys down. You are home. She looked at me like she was seeing 2 men at once, and neither one made sense. Caroline called. She said, Your attorney. Yes. I opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of water. Small movements matter. They tell the room who owns his breathing. Everything okay? I asked. Peachtree Gate Holdings. She said. I leaned back against the counter. What about it? Her jaw tightened. Do not do that. Do what? Do not stand there and act like I said the weather. The kitchen was quiet. Outside. Atlanta moved the way cities move during private disasters. A truck backing up. Someone laughing on the sidewalk. A dog barking like truth did not exist. How long? She asked. I took one sip of water. How long? What? How long have you known? I looked at the woman I had married at the Swan House. The woman who had written my role in her story before I knew there was a script. Since October 22nd. I said. Her face changed. Not dramatically. Lena did not waste movement. But something behind her eyes stepped backward. The file, she said. The file. You opened it. It had my initials on it. She closed her eyes for half a second. Just long enough for me to watch the calculation begin and fail. You never said anything, she whispered. Neither did you. She stood and walked to the window. For a while, she looked out at the street below. Il est here. I had spent 8 months letting silence do honest work. Finally, she said, How much do you have? It was not really a question. It was a woman looking at a map and realizing the roads had been changed while she was asleep. More than not material. I said. She turned. For the first time since I had known her, Lena Mercer looked unarranged. Not broken. Not defeated. Just briefly human. As if the performance had lost power. What do you want? Ethan, there it was. The question that should have been asked before lawyers. Before files. Before strategies with initials. I thought about the honest answer. I had wanted a marriage. I had wanted Sunday coffee. I had wanted the woman from the rooftop who laughed like she had surprised herself. I had wanted to be seen without being studied. But the person who wants a lie to become real is not romantic. He is just delaying the invoice. Nothing you did not already offer. I said. The post-nup stands. Your terms. Your language. Full disclosure attached. You own part of my company, not voting control. You funded my vendors. I funded businesses. Your team chose them. Pierce 4 layers. I said. But yes. She laughed once. No humor. Just disbelief escaping in the wrong shape. You built all of that while living here with me. Yes. While making dinner. Yes. While asking about my day, you were planning year 5. I said. I was planning Tuesday. That landed harder than I expected. She sat back down slowly. You let me underestimate you. No. I said. You insisted on it. For a long time. Neither of us spoke. Then she gathered the folder, put it in her bag, and walked toward the door. At the entryway, she stopped without turning around. I really did not know who you were, she said. I know. The door closed behind her. I stood alone in the kitchen. It did not feel like victory. Not then. It felt like finally putting down something heavy and realizing your hands still hurt. I called Samuel. She knows. I said. How did she take it? I thought about Lena at the window. Calculating. Hurting. Refusing to fall apart where anyone could see it. Like a CEO. I said. Until she remembered she was a wife. The formal separation began in July 2024. Caroline Vance and Samuel Price met on the 31st floor of an office tower in Midtown Atlanta, in a conference room with glass walls and a view of the city pretending it did not feed on ambition. The postnup Lena drafted protected her listed assets beautifully. Her founder shares, her premarital condo, her retirement accounts, her personal trusts, everything she had been careful enough to name. It also stated that separate property, fully disclosed before execution, would remain separate unless expressly converted to marital property. She had written that clause for herself. Then she signed it with my 61-page disclosure attached. That is the trouble with building a cage. Sometimes you forget to check which side of the door you are standing on. Caroline tried to challenge the timing. Samuel pointed to the disclosure receipt. Caroline challenged voluntariness. Samuel pointed to Lena's own attorney notes and her signed acknowledgement. Caroline suggested inequity. Samuel said something he later repeated to me with obvious pleasure. Your client drafted the instrument. Apparently the room went very still after that. The papers were signed on Tuesday, July 30, 2024. I moved out the next morning. 2 movers. 6 boxes. 1 framed photograph. I turned face down and left on the dining table because I did not trust myself to throw it away. I took an apartment in Old Fourth Ward, high enough to see downtown at night and close enough to the Beltline that I could walk until my anger got bored. The first evening there, I stood by the window with a glass of water. Not bourbon, not wine. Water. Clear things felt appropriate. I expected triumph. I expected relief to arrive like music. Instead, there was stillness. The kind of stillness that comes after a machine has been running beside your bed for so long that when it shuts off, the silence feels suspicious. Be August. Mercer Lane's board knew enough to panic politely. Peachtree Gate Steak had become visible through the separation filings. The vendor relationships were not illegal, not even improper, when viewed separately. But they raised questions. Lena could not answer without sounding like she had failed to understand her own house. Investors do not like surprises unless they are revenue. One institutional investor out of Boston requested a governance review. Another asked why the founder's spouse held indirect exposure to supplier networks. A board member in Nashville wanted to know why Pierce Landon's private fund was connected to capital he could not identify cleanly. Pierce resigned first, The official statement said he was leaving to pursue independent investment opportunities. That is a beautiful phrase. It can mean anything. In his case, it meant he had followed a trail of money far enough to find my shadow, and not far enough to explain why he had been standing in it. Lena stayed through the first emergency board session, then the second. By the third, her voice had lost the certainty that used to make people take notes even when she said nothing useful. I did not make a call to remove her. I did not leak anything. I did not whisper to a reporter. I did not tell some dramatic version of the truth at a gala. All I did was let grown people read documents. Never underestimate the damage caused by paper, placed in the right hands at the right time. In late August, Samuel forwarded me an email from Mercer Lane's independent director. The subject line was boring, which meant the contents mattered. The board wanted stability. They wanted credibility with vendors and capital partners. They wanted someone who understood logistics, risk, software, healthcare compliance, and the strange emotional weather of founder-led companies. They asked whether I would consider serving as a strategic advisor. I called Samuel. Tell them no. I said, you have not even let me finish the sentence. I know the sentence. They are asking for advisory status first. Then they are asking the wrong question. Samuel was quiet. What is the right question? Whether I will take the chairmanship? A longer silence. She will see that announcement. He said, I know. And I looked out at the Atlanta skyline. All glass and appetite. The evening light sliding down the towers like the city was polishing its knives. And nothing. I said, it is just governance. On Sunday, September 8, 2024. I read the announcement in the business section while drinking coffee at a small place near Ponce City Market. Mercer Lane Medical Logistics appoints Ethan Caldwell as independent chairman following governance restructuring. Independent. That made me laugh softly into my cup. Marcus called at 9:42. I saw it. He said, good morning to you too. You actually did it. They asked. Ethan. What he exhaled, like a man deciding whether friendship required blunt force. I told you she liked what you represented. You did. I wish I had been wrong. I looked at the coffee in front of me. Outside, people walked dogs, carried shopping bags, pushed strollers, lived small, honest pieces of Sunday morning without understanding how rare that was. So do I said. There was a pause. Are you okay? I thought about Lena sitting at our kitchen table with the navy folder. I thought about the first time she laughed beside the crab cakes. I thought about the 14-page plan with my initials on it, and the wedding flowers that had always been less romantic than they looked. Then I thought about my apartment, my clean window, my quiet mornings, my name on a board seat she had once believed I was too harmless to understand. Yes, I said. Oh, I'm okay. And I meant it. Lena resigned as CEO 3 weeks later. The announcement said she wanted to spend more time evaluating new opportunities. Another beautiful phrase. Another expensive little curtain. I did not attend the farewell reception. Samuel said I should. Marcus said I absolutely should not. For once, both men were right in different ways. Instead, I went home, made dinner for one, and opened a bottle of red wine from North Georgia that tasted better than it had any right to. Around 8:00, my phone buzzed. A message from Lena. No apology. Not really. Lena was not built for apologies that required kneeling. It said, you were never ordinary. Were you? I stared at those words for a while. Then I typed, no. I was just quiet. I did not send anything else. Because the final punishment for people who underestimate you is not watching you explode. It is watching you continue without needing them to understand. A year earlier, she had placed a folder beside my coffee and believed she was reducing me to a line item, not material. By the end, that line had become the whole balance sheet. So if you are listening to this and someone in your life thinks your silence means you are empty, let them misread the room. Let them confuse kindness with ignorance and patience with permission. But while they are talking, learn. While they are planning, document. While they are laughing, build. Because cold justice does not always arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives in a navy folder. A clean disclosure schedule, a board vote, and a cup of coffee cooling quietly beside a man who has already seen the ending. If this story kept you listening, subscribe to Dad's Cold Justice. Drop a comment with where you are watching from and what time it is there. Sometimes a subscription costs you nothing, but it helps this channel more than you know. I will see you in the next story.